What if the version of yourself you have been defending is the very version God is asking you to leave behind? What if the future you keep fearing is actually the future God has been preparing you to walk into? Listen carefully. God is about to change the way you see yourself. And when your vision changes, your decisions change, your courage changes, and eventually your entire future changes. There is a moment when heaven confronts the picture you have carried of yourself for years. Maybe you have called yourself weak because you failed. Maybe you have called yourself forgotten because people walked away. Maybe you have called yourself ordinary because nobody celebrated your gifts. Maybe you have looked at your circumstances and concluded that your future must remain small. But God does not measure your future by your past. Think about a seed. If you held a seed in your hand and judged it by its current appearance, you would never imagine a forest inside it. The seed looks small, dry, and insignificant. Yet hidden inside is potential that cannot be seen with the naked eye. Your present condition is not the full story of your life. What God placed inside you may still be hidden, but hidden does not mean absent. This is why your self-image matters. If you believe you are incapable, you will avoid opportunities designed to stretch you. If you believe you are unworthy, you may sabotage relationships that could help you grow. If you believe your best days are behind you, you will stop preparing for tomorrow. But what happens when God begins changing your vision? You stop asking, "Why me?" and begin asking, "Why not me?" You stop seeing every obstacle as a verdict and start seeing it as training. You stop interpreting delay as denial. You stop allowing yesterday to write tomorrow. And that is the shift I want you to understand today. God is not merely trying to improve your circumstances. He is rebuilding the person who will be able to carry the circumstances you have been praying for. So take a breath. Lift your head. Your story is not finished. The mirror is about to look different because God is teaching you to see what He sees when He looks at you. Today, choose to believe that God is not finished with you. Your identity can be renewed, your imagination can expand, your courage can return, and your future can become larger than the limits you accepted yesterday. There is more ahead than you can currently see. Trust the process. Before God changes your circumstances, He often changes your perception. That is where many people become frustrated. They pray for a new life, but they keep looking at themselves through an old identity. They ask God for bigger doors while secretly believing they are not qualified to walk through them. Imagine a person standing before a locked door with the key already in their hand. They keep asking for access, but they never try the key because they have convinced themselves that the door was not meant for them. That is what a damaged self-image can do. It can make you stand outside opportunities that are already within reach. Look at the story of David. Before he stood before Goliath, he had already learned to see himself differently. Others saw a young shepherd. His brothers saw someone who did not belong in the battle. Saul saw someone inexperienced, but David remembered what God had already brought him through. He remembered the lion. He remembered the bear. His confidence was not based on pretending the giant was small. His confidence came from knowing that God was greater. That is the difference between arrogance and faith. Arrogance says, "I can do anything because I am enough." Faith says, "I can step forward because God is with me." You need to learn that distinction. You are not being called to worship yourself. You are being called to stop agreeing with every lie that has been spoken over you. Maybe somebody told you that you would never succeed. Maybe a failure became a label. Maybe rejection convinced you that you were disposable. Maybe your own mistakes became evidence in the courtroom of your mind. But hear this clearly. A chapter is not a biography. You made mistakes, but you are not your mistakes. You experienced rejection, but rejection does not define your value. You experienced delay, but delay does not determine your destiny. You have weaknesses, but weaknesses do not cancel purpose. God can take the person who feels disqualified and teach that person to walk with authority. He can take someone who has been hiding and teach them to stand. He can take someone who has been surviving and teach them to build. Your future will require a new internal language. Instead of saying, "I cannot," begin saying, "I will learn." Instead of saying, "It is impossible," Ask, what is the next faithful step? Instead of saying, this is who I am, say, God is still forming me. The future begins changing when the conversation inside your mind changes. Keep moving with courage. Now let us go deeper, because changing how you see yourself does not mean pretending everything is perfect. It means learning to see yourself truthfully, without exaggeration and without condemnation. A mirror can show your face, but it cannot explain your purpose. Your circumstances can describe your season, but they cannot define your identity. Your bank account can tell you what you currently possess, but it cannot tell you what you are capable of building. Your past can tell you what happened, but it cannot dictate what happens next. This is where faith becomes practical. Suppose you have spent years believing you are behind. You look at people your age and compare their homes, careers, relationships, businesses, accomplishments, and influence. Every comparison becomes another accusation. You start thinking, they are living the life I was supposed to have. Stop. You are not required to live someone else's timeline. God does not need your life to look like another person's life in order for your life to have meaning. Your assignment may require a different route. Your preparation may take longer. Your lessons may happen in places nobody applauds. And sometimes the hidden season is the season where your strongest foundations are built. Think about Joseph. His future was enormous, but his path included betrayal, slavery, false accusation, and prison. If Joseph had judged his destiny by his worst season, he would have concluded that his life was cursed. But the prison was not the conclusion. It was part of the preparation. That means your current location is not necessarily your final destination. You may be in a season where nothing seems to move. Doors are slow. Answers are delayed. People misunderstand you. Resources are limited. Yet something may be happening inside you that cannot happen in comfort. Patience is being developed. Discernment is being sharpened. Character is being strengthened. Discipline is being formed. Your ability to carry responsibility is increasing. So stop asking only, when will God change this? Start asking, what is God developing in me while I am here? That question changes everything. Because when your identity becomes stronger than your circumstances, you stop collapsing every time life changes. You begin to understand that storms can shake your surroundings without having permission to rewrite your identity. You are still becoming. You are still learning. You are still being prepared. And the fact that you cannot see the whole picture does not mean there is no picture. Trust the process. Keep moving. Keep learning. Keep praying. Keep building. Your future is not waiting for a perfect version of you. It is waiting for a faithful version of you who is willing to grow. There is another transformation God wants to make in you. He wants to change the way you see your future. Fear has a strange way of turning possibilities into threats. You can stand at the edge of a new opportunity and immediately imagine everything that could go wrong. What if I fail? What if they reject me? What if I lose money? What if people laugh? What if I am not ready? But let me ask you something. What if you are more ready than you think? What if the fear you feel is not proof that you should stop, but evidence that you are standing near the edge of growth? Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is deciding that fear does not get the final vote. Moses stood before a future he felt unable to enter. He focused on his limitations. He questioned his ability. He looked at what he lacked. But God did not answer Moses by giving him a personality transplant. God answered by reminding him of his presence. That is powerful. God's answer to your insecurity may not always be, you are naturally gifted enough. Sometimes his answer is, I will be with you. You may not know every step, but you can take the next step. You may not know how the entire story ends, but you can obey what you understand today. Imagine driving at night. Your headlights do not illuminate the entire road from your current position to your destination. They reveal enough road for you to move safely forward. You do not refuse to drive because you cannot see 50 miles ahead. So why are you demanding a complete blueprint before you take the next faithful step? Your future may require you to move before you feel completely confident. Apply for the opportunity. Start the project. Learn the skill. Make the call, have the conversation, create the plan, get up early, become disciplined, read the book, build the habit, stop waiting for perfect conditions. Faith is not passive optimism. Faith moves. And when you move with wisdom, discipline, prayer, and courage, your perspective begins changing again. You discover abilities you did not know you possessed. You discover resilience you did not know you had. You discover that the mountain looked larger from a distance than it does after you begin climbing. Your future is not something you merely wait to receive. It is something you prepare to carry. So stop staring at tomorrow with terror. Start approaching it with expectation. The God who carried you through yesterday is not intimidated by your tomorrow. Your next step can become the beginning of something remarkable. But there is a battle you must understand. Sometimes the greatest resistance to your future is not outside you. It is the old voice inside you. You can leave a toxic environment and still carry its voice. You can walk away from rejection and still hear the rejection. You can receive a new opportunity and still think like the person who was never chosen. That is why external change without internal change can become exhausting. Imagine someone giving you a new house while you still believe you belong in a broken room. You might keep sleeping on the floor because you cannot accept that the new space is yours. The problem is no longer the house. The problem is the belief. Some of you are standing in front of new possibilities with old beliefs. You say you want growth, but you keep protecting your comfort. You say you want influence, but you keep hiding your voice. You say you want financial freedom, but you refuse to learn discipline. You say you want a healthier future, but you keep repeating habits that belong to your past. This is where transformation becomes uncomfortable. God may open a door, but you still have to walk through it. You have to release the identity that was built around survival. Maybe survival taught you to expect disappointment. Maybe survival taught you not to trust anyone. Maybe survival taught you to keep your dreams small so they could not hurt when they failed. But survival is a useful season, not a permanent identity. There comes a time when you must stop asking, "How do I avoid losing?" and start asking, "How do I build? How do I build wisdom? How do I build character? How do I build relationships? How do I build skills? How do I build a future that can outlive my fears?" This is where your prayer changes. You stop saying only, "God, get me out." You begin saying, "God, grow me up." That prayer is dangerous because it invites transformation. Growth will expose excuses. Growth will challenge habits. Growth will demand responsibility. Growth will force you to confront the stories you have told yourself. But it will also introduce you to strength you have never experienced. You will begin to realize that discipline is not punishment, it is preparation. Boundaries are not hatred, they are stewardship. Learning is not weakness, it is expansion. Starting small is not failure, it is strategy. And patience is not standing still. It is continuing faithfully while the results are still developing. Your future needs more than inspiration. It needs a transformed mindset. So let God challenge the voice inside you that says you cannot. Let Him replace that voice with truth, courage, wisdom, and purpose, because the person you are becoming must be able to recognize the future when it arrives. This is how freedom begins. Now picture the moment when your new vision begins producing new behavior. You wake up differently, you think differently, you choose differently. You no longer need everyone to approve of you before you move. You no longer measure your value by applause. You no longer abandon your purpose because one person misunderstood you. This is maturity. And maturity is one of the greatest gifts God can develop in a person. A child wants everything immediately. A mature person understands timing. A child reacts to every emotion. A mature person learns to respond. A child asks, "What do I get?" A mature person asks, "What am I responsible for?" Your future will demand maturity. If God gives you influence before you develop character, influence can destroy you. If He gives you resources before you develop discipline, resources can control you. If He gives you opportunity before you develop wisdom, opportunity can expose you instead of elevating you. So do not despise preparation. Preparation can feel invisible because nobody applauds you for becoming ready. Nobody sees every morning you choose discipline over laziness. Nobody sees every time you say no to a distraction. Nobody sees every book you read, every skill you practice, every mistake you correct, every prayer you whisper, every temptation you resist. But invisible preparation creates visible capacity. Look at an athlete before the championship. The crowd sees the performance, but the athlete remembers the training. The crowd sees the victory, but the athlete remembers the days when nobody was watching. Your life works the same way. There are seasons when God is building you where nobody is looking. Do not demand public results from private preparation, and do not compare your behind the scenes with someone else's highlight reel. Your responsibility is simple. Become faithful with what is in your hands today. If you have 10 minutes, use 10 minutes. If you have one skill, develop that skill. If you have one opportunity, steward it well. If you have a small audience, serve them well. If you have limited resources, manage them wisely. Small obedience can become large preparation. And one day, you may look back and realize that the season you wanted to escape was the season that taught you how to carry what you prayed for. That is why you cannot afford to waste your current season complaining about what you do not have. Use what you have. Learn where you are. Build where you stand. Grow while you wait. Your future is being shaped by what you repeatedly do today. God can change your vision, but you must cooperate with the transformation through your choices. So choose discipline, choose integrity, choose courage, choose growth. Become the person your future requires. Preparation becomes strength as you keep showing. There will also come a moment when you must stop seeking permission from people who were never assigned to define you. Not everyone will understand your growth. Some people knew the old version of you so well that your new behavior may confuse them. They may say, "You have changed," and you should be able to answer, "Yes, I am changing." You do not owe everyone an explanation for becoming healthier, wiser, stronger, more disciplined, or more focused. When a tree grows, it does not apologize to the branch it left behind. You must learn this. If God is changing your vision, some relationships may need new boundaries. Some conversations may need to end. Some environments may no longer fit the person you are becoming. This does not mean you become arrogant. It means you become intentional. Jesus repeatedly demonstrated that purpose requires focus. He loved people, served people, taught people, and cared for people, but he did not allow every demand to control his assignment. You cannot build your future while constantly asking everyone else what they think you should become. Listen to wise counsel, receive correction, stay teachable, but do not surrender your identity to public opinion. People can criticize a seed because they cannot see the forest. They may judge your beginning because they cannot see your potential. They may laugh at your small start because they do not understand your long-term vision. Let them. Your job is not to convince everyone. Your job is to remain faithful. There is freedom in realizing that you do not need unanimous approval to obey God. Some of your biggest breakthroughs may begin when you stop trying to prove yourself. You do not need to prove that you are valuable. You need to live from the value God has already placed within you. You do not need to prove that you are gifted. You need to develop your gifts. You do not need to prove that you deserve a future. You need to prepare for it. You do not need to win every argument. You need to protect your peace and stay aligned with your purpose. And understand this, your future may require separation from the mindset that kept you small. You may have to stop rehearsing old insults, stop replaying old failures, stop introducing yourself by what went wrong. Tell a new story, not a dishonest story, a transformed story. I struggled, but I learned. I fell, but I got back up. I was rejected, but I kept growing. I was delayed, but I kept preparing. I was afraid, but I moved anyway. That is how a new identity sounds. And when you speak that way, eventually your actions begin to agree with your words. Your peace becomes stronger when your purpose becomes louder than the opinions that once controlled your confidence and direction. You are becoming too intentional to return to yesterday's confusion. Now I want you to imagine your future from the inside out. Do not begin with the house, the money, the title, the followers, the relationship, or the applause. Begin with the person you must become. Imagine yourself with stronger character, clearer priorities, deeper wisdom, greater patience, better habits, more courage, more compassion, more discipline, more faith. Then ask yourself, what would that person do today? Would that person keep procrastinating? Would that person continue feeding distractions? Would that person keep returning to environments that destroy focus? Would that person keep speaking against their own future? Would that person keep waiting for motivation before taking responsibility? No, your future self is built through present choices. This is one of the most powerful truths you can accept. You do not become someone different in one dramatic moment. You become different through repeated decisions. Every time you choose discipline, you vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you choose courage, you vote for the person you are becoming. Every time you forgive, learn, practice, save, serve, create, study, pray, and keep going, you are casting another vote. And eventually, enough votes create a new identity. That is why you must stop underestimating small actions. 5 focused minutes can become a habit. 1 page can become a book. 1 conversation can repair a relationship. 1 application can open a door. 1 decision can interrupt a destructive pattern. 1 courageous step can introduce you to an entirely different future. Do not wait for a dramatic sign before doing what you already know is right. Sometimes the miracle is not a sudden change around you. Sometimes the miracle is the new strength developing within you. You begin responding differently. You begin seeing differently. You begin choosing differently. And then your circumstances eventually have to respond to the person you have become. This is why the transformation of self-perception is so powerful. When you see yourself as helpless, you search for rescue. When you see yourself as responsible, you search for solutions. When you see yourself as rejected, you search for approval. When you see yourself as valuable, you search for alignment. When you see yourself as incapable, you avoid challenges. When you see yourself as teachable, you embrace challenges. The goal is not to think you are better than everyone. The goal is to understand that you have responsibility, potential, and purpose. You are not finished. You are not disqualified. You are not too late. You are not too broken to grow. You are not too ordinary to make an extraordinary difference. Your future begins with what you believe is possible, but it becomes real through what you are willing to practice. So practice becoming daily. There is a point in every transformation where faith must become endurance. The excitement of a new beginning eventually fades. The emotional rush disappears. The first week feels inspiring, but the 4th week feels ordinary. That is when many people quit. Do not quit, because consistency is where identity becomes permanent. Anybody can be motivated for a day. The powerful person learns to remain faithful when the feeling disappears. Think about building a house. You do not lay 1 brick and then complain that you cannot see the finished structure. You continue placing bricks. One day, what looked like a pile of separate actions becomes a home. Your life is being built the same way. 1 decision, 1 habit, 1 lesson, 1 prayer, 1 conversation, 1 disciplined morning, 1 courageous afternoon, 1 faithful night, brick by brick. And there will be days when you cannot see progress. That does not mean progress is absent. Roots grow underground before branches become visible. A foundation develops beneath the surface before the building rises. Your character can strengthen before your circumstances change. This is why you must learn to value hidden progress. Maybe you are less reactive than you used to be. That is progress. Maybe you recover faster after disappointment. That is progress. Maybe you no longer need approval from everyone. That is progress. Maybe you can say no without guilt. That is progress. Maybe you are finally taking responsibility for your choices. That is progress. Maybe you have started believing that tomorrow can be different. That is progress. Do not dismiss these changes because they are not dramatic. A transformed life is often built quietly. And when God changes how you see yourself, you begin treating your life differently. You protect your time because you understand its value. You protect your mind because you understand its influence. You protect your relationships because you understand their impact. You protect your purpose because you understand that distraction is expensive. This is not about becoming perfect. It is about becoming intentional. You will still make mistakes. You will still have difficult days. You will still experience setbacks. But setbacks no longer have the authority to define you. You learn to fall without becoming a failure. You learn to lose without becoming a loser. You learn to wait without becoming hopeless. You learn to struggle without becoming bitter. You learn to receive correction without becoming ashamed. That is strength. And one day the person who once said, "I do not know if I can," will look back and say, "I cannot believe how far God brought me." But remember, He did not only bring you somewhere, He changed who you were while you were getting there. Keep going when nobody notices. Keep building when results are still invisible. Keep believing that quiet faithfulness can produce visible transformation. Your consistency is not wasted, and this is where I want you to make a decision. Not tomorrow, not when everything becomes easier, not when everyone believes in you. Today, decide that you will no longer cooperate with the identity that keeps you small. Decide that you will stop introducing yourself through your failures. Decide that you will stop using fear as a reason to remain stuck. Decide that you will become teachable. Decide that you will become disciplined. Decide that you will become courageous. Decide that you will become faithful with what is already in your hands. Because God can change your vision, but you must choose to look again. Look at yourself again. You are not merely the person who survived yesterday. You are a person being prepared for tomorrow. Look at your future again. It is not guaranteed to be easy, but it can be meaningful, purposeful, and bigger than the version you imagined when fear was controlling the picture. Look at your circumstances again. They may be real, but they are not eternal. Look at your failures again. They can become teachers instead of tombstones. Look at your waiting again. It can become preparation instead of punishment. Look at your story again. It may contain chapters you never wanted, but that does not mean the ending has been written. And now, understand the deeper truth. God's greatest work in your life may not begin when everything changes outside you. It may begin when you finally agree with what He is forming inside you. The moment you stop calling yourself what your past called you. The moment you stop measuring yourself by someone else's timeline. The moment you stop asking whether you are enough and start asking whether you are willing to grow. The moment you stop waiting for confidence and start practicing courage. The moment you stop waiting for perfect conditions and start taking faithful action. That moment can become the beginning of a new future. And God may be changing your vision right now so you can recognize it when it arrives. So do not go back to the old mirror. Do not go back to the old language. Do not go back to the old limits. Your future deserves a new perspective. And if this message awakens something inside you, do not let it fade when the video ends. Go back, listen again, write down the sentence that challenged you most, and then act on it today. Send this message to someone who has forgotten who they are, because your next chapter may begin the moment you choose to see yourself differently. Move forward with courage, faith, and purpose.